If you're looking for primary music resources that hit the right note, then on today's Resource Review ICT Special, we're featuring 3 composition tools that might be music to your ears. They are a software package that uses monsters and clouds for musical phrasing, another for composing anything from simple phrasing to multi-track arrangements, and a website featuring tuneful turtles. Recommending today's resources is Carol Slight. Carol is acting head teacher and music teacher at Aronside Primary School in Horsham, Sussex. And on the panel today is Ray Barker, Director of the British Educational Suppliers Association, and Janice Hamilton. Janice is Deputy Head Teacher at St Mary's Catholic Primary School in Aston-le-Wells in Northamptonshire. Over in the test lab, Matthew Tosh, our resident ICT investigator, will be putting the resources through their paces. Well, Carol, tell us about your first resource. It's called More Musical Monsters. Explain this one.
More Musical Monsters is a software package that helps children compose from children aged in reception right through to Year 6. It helps them to use established tunes that they can recognise, and it gives them the opportunity to build on prior musical knowledge. It captures the children's imaginations using monsters. It enables the children to be motivated to build on the musical skills they already have.
Now, is that the kind of tune that the children have composed themselves, or is that something that they can build on and use?
They can use that as a starting point, but it's really up to the creative teacher to take it where she wants to go.
All right, well, let's go over to Matthew and see if More Musical Monsters is a monster hit with him.
Making music with a creative twist is the idea behind More Musical Monsters. You assign different voices and instruments to a series of monsters, and here they are at the bottom of the screen. Now, above each one you've got some clouds, and if I click on one of the clouds, this brings up a composition window. And it's a grid, and vertically I've got the musical notes, the pitch, and horizontally I've got my time. These graphics at the bottom allow me to change the note length, and if I just select one and then click in the grid, it allows me to plant my musical notes. To play it back, I just press the play button. And if I don't like what I've got, then I just hit this delete button here. It's as easy as that. Well, you'll notice there are 3 clouds per monster, so I can have 3 different tunes per monster, and then to add them to my composition grid is a case of clicking and dragging, very similar to the last grid that I showed you, except now I'm adding whole tunes as opposed to individual notes. Underneath my composition grid you'll see there's a tempo bar, which is fairly self-explanatory. I'm going to drag it over to the fast-moving person to increase the tempo. Well, just before I premiere my composition, I'm going to show you the teacher's page, because here you can control the sounds for each monster, how big your grids are, and you can disable the volume controls. There's also a series of study plans, and this has lesson ideas and links to the QCA schemes of work. So all in all, it's quite a colourful and easy to use programme. And all remains for me to do now is to show you my composition.
Janice, what did you think of it? I mean, you've used this with your pupils.
I used this with my Year 5-6 pupils, and I must say that when I introduced it to them, there was instant appeal. Everybody fell in love with the monsters straight away. The module of work that I wanted to do was on how sounds work with one another. So this was the first piece of work that one little group did together. Thing about this programme was that when they're doing this, they're not just using a range of percussion instruments. It opened up the possibility for all different sorts of instruments. I said to the Year 6 boy who had done it, who was perhaps one of the less musical pupils, "What do you think of it?" He said, "Wow, Mrs. Hamilton, it just makes learning fun."
Oh, well, you can't get better than that.
I was really thrilled with it. I think also the thing is that because of the notes that go with it, the explanation that you've got, you can give this to a non-specialist and they will feel comfortable with composing. And I think composition, as you rightly say, is perhaps one of the most difficult for a non-specialist.
Comments from you, Ray. What do you think?
Music and technology really shows, I think, the power of ICT, because research has shown that the best ICT is about children being able to experiment, being able to fail really in a kind of non-blame culture, being able to work at their own pace, being able to work in different groups individually, and yet the teacher is in control of that all the time. So excellent resource for that, I think.
Okay, well now let's move on to Carol's second choice of resource, and this one's called Black Cat Compose. Now Carol, what is different about this resource?
This is a resource that can be matched to listening skills that are part of QCA units. It can also be linked to children's own abilities to put together a whole range of sounds. This is actually linked to the sailor's hornpipe, and the children can develop this in any way they like by using the grid and the icons. This stands out for me because it is a resource that we have used with small groups of children who've got particularly learning difficulties, have struggled with concentration, and a TA has actually taken this on to develop it across into literacy as well as music.
All right, well now let's go over to Matthew in the test lab to see if Black Cat Compose hits the high note for him.
Musical composition is often made up of phrases, and this is certainly the principle behind Black Cat Compose. Now I've got the programme running in its simplest mode at the moment, and on the screen you can see the central area is my composition area. At the top I've got a series of icons, and these represent the musical phrases. If I double click on one of them, you hear the tune. And then once you've done that, you can drag them down into your composition. And I'm going to add a couple of others, just to build up a simple tune. On the right hand side is my instrument choice. And then the control bar to play it back is just above the composition grid area, and you'll note that the volume control is described, so it's very easy for children to control. Well, let's see what I've got so far. I am running the program in its simple mode at the moment. I can change the level using this button here. We'll go to the red, the most advanced level, to show you what the program can do. Now I can change the format of the phrases using the button here, and you'll note that the composition grid has gone. We've got more than one track available as well. I could add rhythms, and I've got much more choice of my instruments here. You can see this from the pianos and the keys. Now unfortunately you can only have one voice, one instrument per track, but in this version of the program you can have up to 8 musical tracks. And then when you finish your composition, you can export it as a MIDI file so you can play it in other applications. Well, just before I finish, I want to show you the teachers page, because this allows you to customize each of the levels, giving you complete control over the functions that are available to your students. And on that note, I'll hand you back to Hermione.
What did you think, Janice, having used this?
I really like this because of the diversity of the levels that you can go in with. The particular piece that's on the screen is a piece that was written by some Year 5 and 6 children. The focus of the lesson was to see how tunes can be interwoven between tracks, but the idea behind it was that the music would be exported onto a PowerPoint and put with their artwork that they're done on night time. The other really good thing that the children liked about this was the Jumblies section, where they have a piece of music, a well-known piece of music, Bobby Shafter or A Nursery Rhyme, London's Burning, and they have to put it into the right order. And I think that's really good for children whose auditory skills are perhaps not as developed.
Ray, what are your thoughts on this resource?
My concern would be about the non-specialist teacher really, and actually getting past the first stage. I mean, when you open the screen you can see it's icon driven and you can see it being used fairly simply, but I think it needs a lot of delving into to get to the tracking and the more sophisticated parts of it. And I think that if you didn't have the specialist or the specialist knowledge or the enthusiasm for music that we have here, you might find that the first part would only get used, and that's not really good value for money in a way.
One of the things we found in our school that helped that particular problem was to model lessons. So I modelled with the ICT technician lessons with children, and it gave the non-specialist teacher the opportunity to see it step by step, and then to go away and use part of the package and come back and then try again. So slowly we built up their confidence and their skills to use it.
All right, well, thank you all very much. Now it's time to move on to Carol's third choice of resource. This is a BBC website. What's it called?
Create Your Own Turtle Tune. The reason that I recommend this resource is that children can use it independently. They can also give the opportunity of collaborative working in small groups with a task that's very clearly set to them. It's a starting point for the non-specialist music teacher to have a bit of fun herself or himself and look at how they could use something like this as a springboard for a good quality music lesson. What you can do with this resource is that you can build in sequencing, you can look at pitch, you can look at volume, and then you can add, if you look here, you can add bass notes and tenor notes. So you look at harmony, which you can then build into any QCA unit of work that you're doing.
One of the limitations I know with this resource is that you can't save your compositions.
No, we have used it in our school as a starting point. It's also a resource that children can play around with and use some knowledge that they've had from this and use it in a music lesson with percussion instruments, both tuned and untuned.
All right. Well, Janice, what do you think of Create Your Own Turtle Tune?
I think it's a fun website, but I think it is very limited in as far as taking children further with their musical learning. Year ones love it. They think it's incredibly good fun. To get anything that you would want to save, I think is quite difficult.
Right.
Because to get the bass or the tenor absolutely in tune and in time with your melody, I think is incredibly difficult. But it's a good piece of fun software, which, as you say, is a starting point. But I would very quickly be wanting to move on to something a little bit more sophisticated.
All right, Ray?
It's free, it's fun, but I don't like the idea of not having feedback in terms of being able to get that sound back again, and they've done it, and then in a sense, so what? You know, the teacher's not really aware of what's happened unless you're doing it as a whole class activity. So it has its limitations, but yeah, lovely graphics, great.
All right, well, thank you all very much. I'm afraid that's all we've got time for. But to recap, the three resources that we looked at are More Musical Monsters from Q&D Multimedia Limited, Black Cat Compose from Black Cat Educational Software, and Create Your Own Turtle Tune from the BBC. For more information about the resources that we featured today, go to our website, teachers.tv/resource review, or email us, resourcereview@teachers.tv. A big thank you to our panel, to Carol, to Janice and to Ray. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time on Resource Review. Bye-bye.